All right, so let's continue from where we stopped. We started with the CSS in our last class, and we started with how you can what is CSS, how you can include CSS on a page. We talked about the syntax, and from there we talked about the rule sets. After that, we talk about some of the selectors there like that before we move into the unit and measurement. And that's what I'm going to be starting from today. I told you that we have absolute units, which means they don't depend on anything on the page. Whatever size you give to the element, that's what is going to maintain on that page. But apart from that, we have these relative units, which is what you are going to be using a lot when you are dealing with responsive design, because you want this element to be changing based on whatever you want it to depend on the page. And we have different units that you can use depending on what you want that element to depend on the page. So we have this rem, which is a relative units to the font size of the HTML. So anytime you're using rem, whatever number you put beside it will always be multiplied by the font size of the HTML there, because HTML is something you can select on the page because an element. So if we go back to the HTML page, as you can, we have the HTML element, and by default, all browsers by default, if you don't change your browser settings like that, so default font size is 16 pixels, which is what is coming out here. Default font size is this 16 pixels. So if you don't change the HTML font size, this is what is going to be there by default, and you can always update it. Or when you go to your browser and you go to settings, because you can change it from setting too. So when you go to settings and you go to your appearance setting and so forth like that, so you are going to let me bring this into this window because it's not showing it at that side. Let me bring it here. So if you go to your settings and you go to your appearance, you are going to see where to send it to set. As you can see, it's set to this medium. So medium, which is the normal setting, is 16 pixels, but you can change it. As you can see, you can change it to large or you can change it to small, and each one of them, they are corresponding to a particular font size there. But by default, all browser, they maintain this medium, which is 16 pixels by default there if you don't change it. But if you change it, whatever element that is depending on this unit are going to change to automatically. So here now, for example, let me just go to the page and create one element so that you can see it in action there like that. So I will just go down to somewhere down here so that I can have that. So before this, so what I'm just going to do is to have a div, and it's going to have units like that. So inside this box, I'm just going to have like a paragraph or something like that, because we'll be needing this one too, like that. So then lorem 30 to just put some dummy text like that. Again, I'm going to have h1 units title like that. So save, and let us go back to the page. Down here we should have this, but I don't want this styling to apply, so that means we're applying one CSS somewhere. Yeah, so as you can see, that's why that one is having color, but I don't want any other thing to. So now we can target the element, because we talked about selector by class. As you can see, that the class I have on it is unit, so I can target it based on that class. And in order for us to see what is going on, so I'm going to give the element, and as you can see now, the entire block is now having this. But what I want to do here is that I don't want the stuff to just keep like the weight of it to be like that. So what I'm going to do here is to change the weight. But now, you know, when you're changing weight, you don't just put number there. You put the units that you want to use. So are you using relative unit, or you want to use absolute unit, which I've shown you. You know, here now if I use 300 pixels here, which is absolute unit, like that, you see that it will maintain this 300 no matter what you are doing with this page. So it will always be this 300 like that. But I don't want to use these pixels. What I want to use now is rem, but this one is really big. As you can see now, what I type is 300 rem, but the actual value is going to be 4,800 pixels. But how does it calculate that value? Where is it getting that value from? For example, I use 20 RAM here. So where is this 320 coming from? So anytime you're using RAM, whatever value you have beside it will always be multiplied by the font size of the HTML. And by default, it is 16. So the extension I have is just assuming that it will just be 20 times 16, which is this 320. But that doesn't mean it will always be like this. If the user change their browser font size, or you yourself you change it from here, it will not be this 320 again. So it will change, and that's why it is relative, because it's depending on what is coming from here. If it change, then it will recalculate this final value. So saving this and go to the page. As you can see, I have this, so we can inspect so that we see what is going on with it. We've talked about this window too, which is what you are going to be using to see what the browser is doing behind the scene there like that. So let me expand it, and let me go to the element, which is this unit. And as you can see right now, it's showing this. As you can see, the final value is showing that it is 320. You don't need to hover on it. So if you come under this computer too, you are going to see all the final values. So if you click on under computed, as you can see, the width is 320, or if you scroll down all the CSS you've used, you are going to see all of them. And as you can see, the final value. The final value is this 320. But that doesn't mean this 20 RAM will always be 320 every time. It's all depending on what is going on with the font size. So here now, if I change the font size of the HTML, maybe I just use 20 pixels like that. So which means now, later on, by the time it gets here, it will now be 20 times 20. So now once I save it, can you see the element now? The box is now bigger, and as you can see, the value is different because you've changed the font size of the HTML. So it's depending on that value. So it doesn't care about this value here. The last thing there is going to depend on what is coming from here, and whatever value that your HTML is using, that's what you're always going to be multiplying this number by. So if you anytime you see me using 2 RM, you know that's 2 multiplied by the font size of the HTML, and by default it's always, as you can see, it's assuming it's 16, even though we've changed it. So here normally it's supposed to be 32, but since we've changed it to 20, it will be 40, not 20 again. So by the time I go to the page, as you can see, now it's 40, and if I disable this one and leave it to the default setting that is here, you see now is now 32. So that's all this about relative. They are depending on something. Once that thing they depend on change, it will recalculate its new value. So it's not always going to be static. It's not like the pixels that is static, that doesn't depend on anything. Or all those other ones like the inches, so forth like that, centimeter, they don't change. The final value is what you always get. But most of the time, like this one now, we want this thing to be changing based on the setting that the user did from their font, from the HTML. And that's the reason you see sometimes, you see that if I change this typographic whatever, so you see all these into, they are going to increase because the browser is using this kind of a unit by default. So if I change this one now, bring it back and save, you see that a lot of other elements too has increased from the way, because that's what the browser is using. But the browser is not actually using RAM, it's using something known as EM. So both of them are kind of in the same family, but they are different, a little bit different like that. So, but they come from the same family there. So going back to the style, you see that the browser is using EM. So what is EM? EM behave like the RAM. The difference between them is that EM doesn't go to the HTML to look for the font. It checks the element you are working on currently first, the font size on it first, before going to the parent. So if we set font size for this one, it will multiply these two by it. But if we did not set font size for this one, it will not check the parent of where this one is coming from. So whatever the font size of that one, that's what it's going to use. If that one does not get, it will keep going up until it's not get to the HTML if none of them is set. And that's why I don't like to use it, because it used to change based on whether you set it on this one or not. So currently now, if I save this one, let's go back to the page, or let's even change this in back to the default one like that, so that every text can go back to the normal way it is. So let's scroll down. As you can see right now, what do we have? So let me pick this one like that. So go back to the div, and let us go back to the computed and scroll. As you can see, it is still 32. So it looks like it's behaving like RAM, but it's not. Now let's update the font size of this one. Maybe this one we just give it font size of 32 like this. So which means whatever font size you give to this one now, so px like this, so it means it's not going to go to this HTML again. Since that element on its own, it's having its own font size, em will use this two and multiply that font size. So it's always depending on its own font size first before checking the parent font size. Before, so that's the difference between rem and em. So once I save it now, can you see the value has changed? Even though the value of html did not change, it has changed because it's now 2 times 30. But if it is rem that I'm using here, rem doesn't care about the font size of that. It always default to the font size of html. So this one is always like, it's predictable there like that. So once you use rem, you know that whatever final value you have to do, you have to come to the html and get that final value from there. But if it is em, that one you have to look. Can you see this one will never change because the one is depending on has not changed. So it's not depending on the font size of the element, it's always depending on the font size of the html. But when using em, this one used to change. So this one, check, do you have it on this element? Yes, that's what you use. But if this one doesn't have it, so if this one doesn't have it, then to now check the parent of this one. And the parent of this one, if you check it, it is the body. So the body too, we did not set any font there. So body too will now go to its own parent, and its parent is this html, and that's the reason why he's using that 16 like that. So, and that's the problem with this one. If you are using it, if the element have this thing, don't expect it to be using, and that's why I don't use it like that. But it have its own place of usage. Like they have where you use it, but majorly you always see me using rem because that one is always predictable. You know where the value is coming. So if there is anything that is wrong, you know where to go to go and look for the value. But with this, you have to start from that element and you keep going upward. Now imagine you have a lot of elements, so you have to look for it in different places there like that. So and that's this why they introduce rem. Before, what we have is em. So introduce rem to solve the problem of what this one used to cause, because it used to change based on whether there is font size on the element or not. And again, it doesn't stop there. It will keep going up until it gets to the html. And any one of them is fine in the parent that have that font. That's the one it will pick. And you know that you have to start looking for all of them and look at which one has font, which did not have font, and so forth like that, which is waste of time and unnecessary debugging there like that. So you always see me using rem. So this is about the rem. Another one that we have there is percentage, which is another, which is common one that you are going to be using a lot like that. So we're going to be using this rem and this percentage, and sometimes this vh and this vw. So what is percentage? So in order for you to see what is going on here, we need to work on one of the items that is inside. So inside this unit, so we talked about this one too. We have h1 there. So which means we are not selecting any h1. We're only selecting all the h1 that is inside units like that. And what do I want to have here? So I want to have background color of yellow so that you can see what is going on there like that. So scrolling back or down, as you can see by default, the element with all those block elements, they cover up the entire space that is available. But I don't want it to cover up the entire space. I want it to take percentage of that space, and that's where the not screen, oh, percentage of its parent. So when you are using percentage, it doesn't talk about screen. It work with the parent where you put it. If you look at it at the h1, that's why you see that it's not growing past this side, because this is where the parent stop. That's where it will stop too, because that's where you place it inside the HTML. So scrolling down, you see that we have the div, and inside the div we have this h1. So it will never grow past whatever that is going, even though you can tell it to grow past it, but by default they will never grow past their container. So this is the container here, and since inside that container, we can talk to it to take percentage of that container, and that's where the percentage say this thing comes in. So if we set the weight, now instead of rem, we can just say 50%. So what this percentage is doing is that whatever property you use it on, it will go to the parent and take the percentage of that value from that parent. So here we said the weight should be 50%. So what this thing will do is that it will come to this parent, because this is the unit, and it's one that, so what it will do, it will look at the weight of this one, then it will take 50% of it. So whatever the percent of it, that's what this one will take. So which means it's depending on the parent. So when this one change, this one too will recalculate a new value, because it's always depending on the weight of what you have here. Like whatever weight you apply on the parent, it will take the percentage of whatever you put beside it here. Since I'm doing 50%, it will always be half of the screen. And it can even make this one too to be percentage too. So which means if I use that 70% here, it means
wherever this one is placed, its parent is going to take 70% of that space. Then that means this one too, whatever the final value of 70% of this one will now take 50% of it. So with this now, I can create a responsive layout. So if I'm on a small screen, it will adjust according to that screen. Because don't forget, the body is, that red is inside the body. And you know this entire white area is the body. So that's 100%. From here to here is 100. Then take 70% of it. And since the 70%, so what is 70% of what I'm currently saying right now? So you can click on it. You see that the weight is 210. So that means the inner one will take 50% of this one. So if you check the H1 now, you see that the weight of that one is 105. So because that's what it is. So whatever the value of the parent, go there and take percentage of that one. That's percentage. Percentage doesn't go outside of its container. So if you have a child and you're using percentage for any property there, it will go to the parent and take the percentage of that same property that you're using. So since I'm using weight here, it will come to the parent and deal with the parent there. It doesn't affect any other thing because the weight is what we are changing here. So that means the parent weight, we are going to take percentage of that one. And that's the reason why you see that if the height is changing, nothing will happen because it's not depending on that one. As you can see, nothing will change. It will still maintain because the only thing we are depending on is the width. And since the width is not changing, so nothing will happen. But if it is the width, the height you want to depend to, so that one we have the property for that. But when we get to the property, we'll be talking about the width and height in general. But for now, we are just using it to explain the units. But what if you want to depend on the entire screen, not the container? So when you want to depend on the entire screen and not the container, what we can do here is to use VW or VH. So this one allows you to take percentage of the entire screen, not the container. Now when you're using percentage, it's talking about container. But when you're using VW, it's talking about the viewport weight. So VW means viewport weight, but it's still percentage. So from here, this white here to here, that's the viewport weight. And from this white here to this white here, that's the viewport height. So that means from here to here is 100% of the height, and from here to here is 100% of the width. So you cannot take any percentage of them like that. So here we are taking 50% of the entire viewport. So now it's not depending on the parent again. Once we save, you see that the 50% is not calculated based on that container again. It's being calculated based on the screen like that. Or if I change this one, maybe I just give it like 20 rm so that this one is not dependent on the parent again. You see that it's not dependent on the parent to calculate. And if this one change, the parent will not change at all. So the inner one, see that it's only the inner one that is changing because it's the one that is depending on the viewport width. But you know this one did not depend, it just ran directly. So what is dependent on, did not change, so it will not change too. So as you can see here, you always take 50% of the viewport weight like that. And if it is the viewport height too you want, so instead of VW is going to be VH like that. So now if I change the weight, nothing will happen because it's not depending on that. What is depending on is the height. So once the height change, so it will change its value like that. So this is how this thing one. These are the basic one you need to know right now. We have a lot of units in CSS. We have a lot of them, but these are the major one you always use like that. Almost like 100 or something we have in CSS. I don't even use them like that, but the common one you always use like the pixels, the rem, the em, the viewports, and so forth like that. You can see major one you always see is pixels when you are talking about absolute one, and when you are talking about relative one, you use rem, you use percentage, you use viewport width or viewport height like that. But there are more than that. There are a lot of them. As you can see, it's always this one they will talk about. They don't bring all of them because these days people don't really use them. But if you go to where's the original documentation, yeah, so this, it should be here. There's a lot of them. So we have a lot of them, but the one you always see is the common one. So the cm, the physics like that. That's the calculation of each one of them relative to the screen like that. So 1 pixel is the same thing as 1/96% of 1 inches or something like that. But that's not the major thing. What I'm looking for here is the list. They don't really show the list like that, but it's really much. It's really much. But this is original. Let me see. Most of the time they always show, except you go deeper into it like that, that's where you see, but we don't really need them right now. So let me quickly move to the next one, which is by talking about colors. So let's quickly move into the next one, which is colors, because we don't want to be wasting time. So this is colors. So we have different ways of representing colors. We have different way. The one I've been using since, which is the named color, just red, green. Once you know the name of the color, type it, and you're going to have it. And luckily, VS Code have the display of color for you there like this, so you can always, there's a lot of them, just type the name. VS Code have a lot of them already, so control space back is going to bring a lot of them out like this. But we 90% of the time you will not be using name color because they are kind of a really sharp and not like the way you want it to be. So we have other ways of representing color. So we have the hexadecimal color, which always start with this hash, then followed by 3x number, or it can be 4, or it can be 6. But right now I'm displaying 6. It can even be 8. That one when you want to do transparency. So it will be 8 like that. But most of the time, the one of 6 is what you always use. But you can see some people, they will use 3 values. So this is the same thing as just white. So this FFF is the same thing as you just typing white like that. But we are using hexadecimal to represent it. So A, B, C like this. This is going to give me a color. So it can be 3 letter like this. It can be 3 hexadecimal number after the hash. It can be 4, and at the same time it can be 6 like this. So it can be 3. So when it is 3, the first value is for your red, the second one is blue. It's just the RGB. So RGB. So that's what it, so like that. So when it is 6, the first two is the red, the second two is the G, and the last one, the last two are there. And if you want to add the alpha, alpha is the other two numbers that is going to be added. But that one is not that easy to, because you have to convert it to your 0 is a number between 0 and 1. So you convert it to hexadecimal number, which is ways of typing like that. So there's a lot of tools you can use to get all this color. Most of the time, say you not even be doing all this thing. Your own is to get the color, then you be using them like that. But you just need to know different ways of representing color. So we have the X, and again we have this RGB. Yes. For the hexadecimal code. Yes. Do I just input any letter, or are there letters I have to? You don't need to. That's why I say I call it hexadecimal. So the hexadecimal number is what you are combining together. And I just mentioned that you won't be bringing all this code from your head. Depending on what you are doing, there you can use VS Code to quickly look for the. So you go to the color you want, and once you get there, as you can see, it will generate it, and you can press it here. See, it will generate the corresponding code for it like that. So the design will be given to you. From the design, you see all the necessary code are there. Or when you are working yourself, or when you use AI or anything you are using, when you just tell it to design something for you, all the you instruct it to give you the necessary code for what is just be. For example, now let's just go to this chat GPT like that, and let's just tell it to design a simple login page with username, email, and password feeds. Also, so you just said it. Also, use a colors, and yeah, colors code in whatever the mode you want. So for example, now I want the color to be in X like that. So press enter. So it will do whatever it needs to do, and you get, as you can see now, can you see it bring out the code for. So you want to use all of them. They love, I don't know why they love this indigo. So as you can see, primary color, when you over on the whatever stuff, so this is the color code you are going to use for the background. This is the color code you are going to use, and so forth like that. So here now I just need to copy the color code, go into my code, instead of this one, remove it and replace it with this one, and as you can see, I have the code, I have the color. But you need to know different ways of representing color, so they can prompt the stuff to give you what you want. So if it is the RGB I want, I just need to mention it here. Like as you can see now, this is the HTML like that, and everything is here. But now when you prompt AI to give you something, but you don't even understand what is it, by now you know that these are classes. So it's telling you that this is a class somewhere on the element. As you can see, this one is the element, but it's targeting the focus of that element. So you know it's using the element selector here, while here is using the class. But why is it using element? It's mixing them together. So all those things we are going to be talking about them later on, when you need to use class, when you need to use element. But most of the time when you use class is when you want to apply the same thing to different element in different places majorly. Even with the same element too, you can always use class like that. But if you know that you are not doing these classes with any other element on the page, it's just this particular element, you can always mention that element directly and it's going to apply it. But I always have to use class so that in case I want to do that thing to another element that is not the same, I will just apply the class. And as you can see, all the necessary HTML that we have here, we've already worked on a lot of them like that. So if you want to see this one now, what we can just do is scroll down, just copy all the content like that. What's going on? So copy all the contents like this. So Control C, go to the page like that. So down here after this div, so just paste the stuff, save, go back to the page. There won't be anything there yet. So if you scroll down, as you can see, it doesn't look like the way it's supposed to be. So what do we need to do? We need to get the style. So you know, it's using the embedded CSS, but I want to convert it to the external one. So, and you know they are the same thing. The difference is just where you are putting the CSS. So now what I just need to do here, so scroll down, or so scroll down to all this one. So copy like this, go back to the page. So go back into my CSS. Then after everything here, just paste and save. Then go back to the page and check. You see that the form it has destroyed some of my stuff. So scroll down like that, reload the page. Yeah, so it has destroyed some of my stuff. Let me see what it did. That's why you don't just copy AI blindly. You check whatever it is doing on the page. So let me see all the nonsense it's doing. So first display like this, H2, it's changed a lot of things. Don't let me waste time on it, because if I say I should just be correcting the stuff now, it should just be a waste of time of what we want to do. But we can style them by ourselves there. But the major thing is that you can represent your color using this hexadecimal code like that. But apart from that, we have the RGB mode. So when you're talking RGB, so it's the same thing. The difference between them is just you are representing it using numbers. So RGB like this. So the first one is the red, and this is a number between 0 and 255. Whatever number you have to use here have to be between 0 and 255 for each one of them like that. So you can put comma there, or you can separate them with space. Comma is for older browser. So if you want to support older browser, you always put comma there, but you can separate it with space. All the new browser will understand the stuff. So if I use C7 space, C7 and 120 like this, it will give me the color that is with that. So save the code. You see, going back to the page, we should have the background as this particular one using RGB. But when you want to support other browser, you can put comma there like that, because all these other browser requires this comma in order for it to work. But the new browser, you don't need to put that comma, it will still work. So another mode that we have, which I love to use a lot, is known as this HL cell. So I love to use this HL cell. Why? Because it allows me to move with from different color to another one without changing the insert. So we have this H for hue, which is the color code. So every colors that you want to use, we have something known as a color spectrum, or the color wheel like that. Anyone you want to call it, you can see. So we have color wheel. On this wheel, that's where you have the number of all the colors. You can see it starts from 0, even though this thing did not arrange it correctly. It starts from 0, which is red, as you can see, and which is the same thing in VS Code. Just the arrangement is what is different. So it's still the same thing here too. So this is color spectrum. Yeah. So look at it. It started from red. So it started from red and it go back to red, because you know it's in circle. So where you start from, that's where you are going to end. So whether you are in 360 or you are 0, it's still going to be at the same point. So this is the color spectrum like this. So you can switch between each one of them, and each one of the color spectrum have number assigned to them. So from 0 all the way to 360, and that's what this U is talking about. So U is what wait, so the number you are going to be using here is the U number, which is this H like that. Then the other one is the saturation. So how pure is that your color? So how pure is the color? Everything is VS Code. So all this thing they are in VS Code. So this is the your saturation level. So you can control whether you want it to be pure or unpure version of that color. So this is a pure like that. So this is totally pure red. So when this thing here, so we're using HSL, is going to be between 0% and 100%. 0% means that color is not even there at all. So it's not pure. So it's going to go to the gray. So when you want the gray version of that color, you keep reducing it. And if you want pure of that color, you keep going upward. And for the last one, which is this L, is known as lightness. So how light or how dark is that your color? You can see here too is in VS Code. As you can see, there is darker version of it and there is light version of that color. So everything that HSL, you can control everything directly from here like that. So if you want to control the lightness and the saturation of the color yourself, HSL is really powerful to use like that. So for red now, the U color there is 0 because the color spectrum starts from 0, which is the red, as you can see from the VS Code color this thing. Yeah? So color background color come outside. So here we have HSL. So the first thing you pass to it is this. So now what I'm saying here is that, as you can you see that it's light because the lightness is 80, is close to 100. So which means the color is going to be a light version like that. So if you want to this thing to be a dark color, but it's still going to be that red, then you reduce this below 50. So once you're below 50, you are going to the dark area, and above 50, you are going to the light area, and 50 is so now if I use this one, it's still going to be red, but a darker version of that color. And as you can see, we are using 100% of the red. But again, with this, it makes it easier for me. I can just take the spectrum from this into green, but I will still maintain the lightness and the saturation there. So save the same type of thing for the red like that. So you can always use any one of the color mode. All the software that you can use to design, all of them have different mode, and you can change it that this is the mode you want it to output the value for you, and you'll be able to use it. Because with this color now, I want to be able to create a lighter version of it on my distance. So for the text, because if you look at it now, the text is really black, it's not looking nice. So the same background I have here, I want to have it on a text, but it's going to be a lighter version of it. With HSL, it's quite easier to do because here I just need to increase the lightness of this same code there. So for the background, is using a darker version or there like that, and for the text is using a light. So it's going to give this kind of a nice design that you only see online like that. So where is it? Oh, I'm using let me reverse it. Let me give this one 80 and let me give this one 20 to give that nice design. So this design always kind of when you use a light, so there's all this in our color theory that we don't need to be talking about here because we're not dealing with design like that. I'm still changing the same thing because I'm not changing the text color like that. So save, you see now this, so it gives this kind of a nice color combination because it's still the same color. So here too, if I want, maybe I want to switch it, just VS Code. So maybe I want to VS Code, VS Code, VS Code. So this one should be 80 and this one should be 20 like this. So save and go back. You see that it will always give this kind of a nice design there like that. So this is the other color. There's another one too that we have there like that. When you want to apply transparency, you will need to add what we call the alpha channel. So this RGB have another version known as this RGBA. So this A is the alpha channel which control the transparency of the color, and this value is between 0 and 1. 1 means the color is not transparent at all. So you cannot see anything at the back of that color, and that's what it's doing here. As you can see, we cannot see the red at the back of it because it's not transparent at all. But if you want it to be transparent so that you can be able to see what is at the back of it, you can always use this RGBA or the HSLA. So you just add A to the stuff like that. So when you add A, then you add another value which is 0 or 1 or any number in between that range like that. And by default, if you don't even, when you use HSL, by default, the browser is just setting it to 1. And that's why you cannot see anything at the back of it. But here now, what we can just do to duplicate this one, but instead of having this version, so okay, VS Code. So I will just add A at the back, then at the end, I will put this. So which means the color is going to be semi-transparency because it's 0.5 halfway. So it's going to be semi-transparency like that. So once you go down now, you see that it's now transparent. We can still see the color at the back of it. Or if you don't want it to be that transparency, just go close to 1, maybe around this 0.9, which is really close to 1. You see, it's still transparent, but you will not really see what is at the, assuming it is the image we use, you see it more than that like that. For example, I can just say background, and we'll get to all this one. You know what, this is what we're going to next, so let me just leave that one for now. So these are the different mode of color that you are going to be using a lot. These is not all, these are the major one that you always use like that. So you can use the name if you want. You can use the X, the RGB, the HSL, like that. But VS Code have a lot of them, and you can even switch from different ones. So once you click on it, as you can see, it will switch to. That's why I did not talk about all these OK lab like that, because all these one are kind of crazy. You start doing mathematics, but you don't need them. So we have the RGBA, and this is where you can control the alpha channel. So as you can see, this one is from VS Code like that. So you can control your alpha channel, right? So this is 1. Which means it's not there at all. So which is the reason why I remove it. But this is 0, which means that color is totally transparent. You cannot see that color at all. Then if you use any number in between, then it will generate. And this is the spectrum, the hue. So you can always switch between different color like that. And here you can change the saturation of the color. So like this. So we'll go to the pure version or to the or lightness. So to the dark area of it or to the light area of that color. But you won't be doing all this except if you are trying to do some of this from your head. Most of the time, the design is already there. So you get all the colors from that design you are trying to work on there. But it's not less for you to pick any mode that you want to use to represent your colors like that. So that's what we have under colors are there. But this is all the before we move to the background. Yeah, so background, yes, I've been using some of these properties since, like this background color and so forth like that. So we need to talk about them. This is what you can use to change the background of your elements. So like the text, the container, a lot of elements, you can change their background, except image, because image has already covered a lot of things. So there's nothing you want to add to the image there like that. But a lot of elements, you can always change their background. For example, here now, I've done a lot already here. So this is our H1 and this our the unit box. We've changed their background in order for us to see their weights, where it started from and where it stopped in. Because without the weight or without their background, you will not really see anything that is going on. But it's not only color that you can use. You can use image as background. So not that you are using image element, you want the image to be the background there. So here we have the background color, which is something I've used already, and we have the background image. So we are dealing with image. You can use it to create transparent, you can use it to create gradient, because we are dealing with gradient. It's not just normal color. You are mixing multiple colors together. So when you want to create gradient, you are going to be using background image. Or you want to use external image, it's still background image you are going to use. So when you want to create image, you are going to pass the URL. So where is that image coming from? So you pass it here. Since we have it locally, so I need to go back. No, I need to go back. So I'll be able to see image. Then I'll be able to see which one is there. Okay, let me use this one. and let me save. So going back to the page now, as you can see, it has this, but a lot of things are going on there. So in order for you to see what is going on, let me move it to the container so that it will be easier for you to see some properties that I'm going to talk about, because that space is too small, so you will not really see what is going on inside the H1. But let's put it inside the container, and let's make sure that this container too is just 100% like that. So which means it will cover up whatever the size of the parent. What did I type? What did you type? So here now, save, and as you can see now, can you see now, he's using it. So let me increase the height too so that you can see what is going on. Let me use 450. So because of some other properties I want to, that works, because you can see what is happening. The stuff is not, you can see that it's out, like the image is really big, because the original size of the image is bigger than where I'm using it. But how do you now control the size of that image? So we have some other properties that you can use with this background image. Assuming it is colored, that one will covers everything automatically for you, like it will cover the box. You know, the image is not changing at all, so your eyes will not see that whether it's full or it is not full. But image, you know, there's a lot of textures and different things in different places, so you are going to see. So we have the background size. So this is what you can use to control the size of your background. So what is the size of the background size? So here you can specify the weight like that, and the height is not required like that. So if you don't specify the height, it will adjust it automatically like your normal image. If you adjust one of them, it will change the other one. So background size. So the width here, this is what you use to control the weight of the stuff. And if you want to specify the height too, you can always specify it here like that. So for example, if I use 300 pixels, what I'm saying is that I don't care about the original size of the image. The width that I want you to maintain, this image that I'm using is going to be 300 as a width. Now once I say, can you see now? The weight is now 300, but some stuff started happening again. So which is, it started repeating. And that's another thing that the browser is doing. When the image is too small that it can't cover that box, it will repeat it until it covers up the entire stuff. It's like color too. You know, the color will fill all the space, but you know, your eyes cannot see that the color is actually repeating. So there is no need for you to be doing anything with that. But image, as you can see, is repeating itself. But if you don't want it to repeat, you can always control that one too by saying background repeat. So here there are different values. What is using by default is this repeat. So that's what is here by default. So you don't need to be typing this. But if you want, you can repeat X. So which means it will only repeat the X axis, which I've never used all this one before. Like that. These are kind of adhered in the olden days before ATM CSS have a lot of power. So that's where all this one is being used. But at some time too, you might want to use it, but I don't really use them. I always want to have one that control the size myself so that it's covered up. But as you can see, it will only repeat on the X like this. But if I don't want it to repeat on the X or just Y, so what we can do here is to do repeat Y. You see that it will only repeat on the Y. Or let me reduce the size so that we can see it more. So if I use like maybe 120 like this, so that it will have a lot of them. As you can see, it will repeat until it's covered up on the Y. Or if you just say repeat, or you don't even put it at all. So this is what it's going to do. It will keep repeating until it covers up that entire box like that, because that's the container. It must fill everything. But I don't like to use this. What I normally use is no repeat. So which means it will maintain the original, this is the original size of that element there like that. But as you can see, you have to start guessing the original size of, like you want it to cover up the entire container. So which means you have to adjust container, you adjust this one. That's waste of time. You can always use percentage. For example, I can say the width is going to be 100%. As you can see, it will cover up the, and don't forget the height too, we adjust automatically since I did not mention. But if you want to change the height too, you can change it. For example, here I can say this one is going to be, the height is going to be 50 pixels. So the width is 100%, while the height is 50 pixels. But most of the time, you don't touch this one. And again, too, you don't need to be typing all this in yourself. CSS come with some predefined values. So one of them is known as this contain. What is contain? What contain means that no matter the size of this image, it will make sure that it contains the box wherever you place it. But the problem with it is that if that image, the height might not actually cover up the entire stuff. So it doesn't mean it to cover up the entire container. What it's looking at is the width. The only thing it's focusing on is the width. I mean, the width is always covered, but it doesn't care whether the height is covered. So once the width is covered, it will stop there like that, and it will maintain whatever that is left are there. So look at it here. As you can see, look at what just happened. So no, we said the width is normally the width of this thing is really wide. So what it will do is it will drag it and make sure that the weight is covered. So it doesn't care whether the height of the box is filled. It all depends on the height. It's because I use a lot of height there, which is this 450. For example, now if I use 150 like that, it should cover, because the original, as you can see now, look at the width too, is no longer covered. The height is what is covered. And what is happening here is that it will make sure that the image is not cut out at all. And the reason why it's really like this, because if you drag it to that side, part of this image is going to cut out, but it doesn't make the image to cut out. It will just fill it. But what if you want the stuff to always fill? You don't care whether it's cut out or you don't. So that's where this other one comes in, which is cover. So when you use cover, this one, it will drag the image until it cover up that container. It doesn't care whether part of it cut out or not. It will drag it until everywhere is covered. So save this one now. As you can see, it will drag it. But the problem with that one is that some part of the image can just go out. So yeah, so but there's still a way of making sure that it's not like it will always cut. So when you use cover, it will drag it. So it's not depending on the weight. So now if I take this thing to 450, so it depends on the container, because the way it will drag it is the container. So again too, we now have another way of changing it like that. So apart from this background this thing, so we have background position. So we have background position. So you can change how you want to move it on the x-axis and how you want to move it on the y-axis, or this one is to move it on both sides at once. So this is what we call shorthand property, because this is where shorthand property start from. They're like that. So shorthand property means there's one property that can change other multiple properties. So these are the properties here. Background position x to change only x. Background position y to change only y. But this background position can change both the x and y on one line. The same thing too, this background image, background side that I'm mentioning since, I can use this shorthand property background to do all of them on one line. So the same thing here, I can just say URL and so forth like that. It will still work. This is, it can even do color too. So I say red, it can do both the color, the image at the same time. But it's kind of like crazy, because the way you arrange this background, you must arrange it in the correct way. It's not like some other, all those ones that they don't follow pattern, or they don't really have whatever stuff. So we'll be talking about them later on there. So another thing we have is this background position. But in order for you to see this background position in action, let's disable this one, because it has already covered. You will not really see it like that. Even you might see it, but it will not be feasible like that. So let's talk about the background position. So this is what you can use. That one that I say it's cut out now. You can use this one to move your image around based on the one based on where you want to see from that image. Because if you look at this mayover side now, if you look at the this thing here, as you can see, this thing is close to this edge. If you look at the background image, it is close to this edge. It's still background image I'm using here, but the position here, I mentioned that the position should be by this side, because I don't want all these people to cut out. This side, there is nothing much here, so that one can cut out. But these people here, they must always stay at that side. The same thing too, if you go to the co-working space like that, you see that this image here is still the same thing as the image you are seeing here. Where is it? Which one did I even use? I think it's this one. But if you look at it, some part has already cut out from the image, because as you can see, it's showing this. You can see they are the same thing. This person, this person, this person, they are still the same people here. But if you look at it, you see that here I'm using it as background image, but that place, the image is not up to that place. So I have to, use cover. When you use cover, it will drag it and cut anyhow. But I can tell you that don't cut this particular place. You can position it to where you want it to be. So yeah, By default now, going back to that place, going back into the page. So let me bring this one out, and let me disable this one, and let me save it first so that we can go back to the place. Okay, go back. Where is it? Oh, I've not disabled this. Yeah, I've disabled this one. What's wrong with this? So save. Oh, I did not save. Reload. Ah, the height is this, the width is this. What's wrong with VS Code? What's going on? It's not supposed to full like this. Okay. Let me open my this thing back. Let me save from here because this VS Code sometime it used to behave somehow. I've disabled this one because once it's disabled and I have the height to be 450. Okay, yeah. So background, let me change the size because that image is really big. Background size to be, what did I use that time? Let me use 150 pixels, like this. Yeah. So look at it now. By default, all your image, they always start from this edge. So the dragging will always start from here. So it will drag it downward. And that's why you see that these parts are getting cut out. But this one will never get cut out because it all. So instead of you placing it here, you can actually move it anywhere inside that container by using the position. So we have the background position there. So background position, this one to come with some predefined value in this thing. So when you say top, right, like that, so it means it will start from the top, then from the right edge. So save, as you can see, it has moved to that top right. So when it's dragging now, when you use cover later on, it will drag it downward to this side because you mentioned that it must stick to that top right as the position. But if you want like that, you can mention the value yourself. So on the X, don't forget the first one is X, the second one is how you are moving it on Y. So positive is coming down, negative is going up, like that. So negative is pulling towards the axis, like that. So if I use 50 pixels, what this one is saying, from the top, it will come, it will go to the, no, don't forget this is X, so it will go to this side by 50 pixels, and it will come down by 120 pixels, like that. So if you know the position, you can always put the value yourself, like this. As you can see, from here to here is 50 pixels, from top to here is 120 pixels, but you can always use some predefined CSS value. So if I say center like this, so if you don't mention the Y is always center. So if you mention only X, the Y will always go to center automatically. So which means if I just say 50 pixels here and I did not mention anything about Y, if I save it, the Y is always at the center automatically. But the X, you can control it like this. And if I say center like this, it means, don't forget, it's one value. So it means X is center, and the other one is always center by default. So you see that it will go to the center of the so. With this one now, when you do cover now, so it will maintain the center of that image and it will now expand outward. So if you know that the image you are working with, the eye, you want the edge to always show, what you do is to do top center. So when you do top center, you know that from here it will be here, then from there it will spread downward there. So that means the top will not cut out, but the downward part. But if you know that it is down that you want to focus on, then you are going to use bottom like that for the Y. So here now, what we can just do here is going to be center, then it's going to be bottom like this. So save, then it will come down, but when it's expanding, it will not go upward. This side will never cut out there by the time we started doing this hour. So now if I just say cover like that, so by the time you drag the stuff, the down part will always be there. It will not drag it outside from that place. So that's what you always use anytime you have a background and that background needs to cover up and it needs to maintain one particular side. You are going to position it. But at some time, some of this your background, as you can see as I'm scrolling, that background too is scrolling along with it. So if you don't want it like that, we have something called background attachment. So background attachment, but before you can see this one, let me increase the height so that you can see it. So let's use 1200 like this so that we have more height on that box. So now as you can see, as I'm scrolling, the background too is scrolling. But if you go to some sites, the background don't scroll along with the content. It always stays there. So we call it background attachment like that. So when you say fix, so it means that background, and again too, this one too will readjust the way the size is being calculated. Since it's not moving again, so it will readjust the calculation of all the size that you have there. So now can you see? You can see that the way it's displayed before is different. So but now the only content will be moving, nothing else. So that background will always maintain. And that's what they normally used to do some style on website that it look like the image is not moving, but the content is actually moving. What they do there is just background fix. Like as you can see, the content will move, but that background will never leave that your viewport. So it will never leave the viewport that you are working with. Like that. So as like this, it doesn't leave viewport. You always maintain the stuff, and other one we just scroll along with it like that. So these are the major things you need to know about the background for now, except the gradient that I've not talked about. So we need to talk about that gradient. No, I've been talking about image things, but all these property too, they work with gradient too. All these repeat, no repeat, whatever stuff, they work with gradient. So let me reduce this one first because it's too much. Let me use 320 that we have a small space like that. So here now what we can just do is background image, but now instead of us using URL, what we need to use is linear gradient or conical gradient, depending on the type of the gradient you want, because we have to type or major type, or the major type here is just two. So we have the radial and the linear. So when you're talking about the linear gradient, it means the color follow in a straight line pattern. So is that you are moving from left to right or right to left, top to bottom, bottom to top, diagonal from top right to the bottom right, and so forth like that. But it's always in a straight line like that. So when you want to create any kind of these gradients, you can see the color start from here and it keep moving towards here gradually. So these are what we call linear, or the one that start from top is always in a straight line form. Like all of them here, they are linear because you can see they are in a form of line. You can always draw line to track how the color is moving like that. So when you want to draw this kind of a gradient as your background like that, so you are going to be using linear gradient. But apart from that, we have radial gradient. So this one is radial now. This one is, as you can see, it's like a circle gradient. So it's not following. So this one what we call repeated gradient like that. So it keep repeating that your gradient and whatever stuff you want to do. But apart from this linear, we have radial, so which is radial. It's so these are the two. As you can see, in a circular form, and you can use it to do a lot of crazy stuff like that. So I think vit.dev like that, you are going to see a lot of they've changed their sites like that. So they've changed their site. But this, as you can see here, you can always use radial to do this kind of a gradient. You can see like a circular gradient there like that. But this one is not linear because it's not follow any line. Can't use line for that. Same thing here too. All this kind of stuff you have to use this. But we're going to be talking about the linear gradient there like that. Why did they change your, let me see, plugins? All right, so let me go. Which other sites? There's a lot of them using gradient, but you can always, for example, gradient landing page like that. So you're going to see different landing page that use gradients. As you can see them like this. So these are what we call radial because it's not follow a line, not follow a line. So these are radial gradients. One of them here is linear, but this one is linear here. So if you look at it, the color start from here and it move gradually to this one. So that's linear. So if you want to not do something like this, you need to use linear gradients and you give it all the colors you want. So inside this function gradient here, you are going to be giving it all the color. So red, blue, green, and so forth like that. Whatever color you want to mix together like that. So going back to the page, there like that, you see started from that color, and but if you look at it, start from the top and it's moved downward. But you know this one now, it started from this side and it goes to this side. So you can always change direction like that. So how do you do that? So again, I will not be using too much of color like this. I will just use maybe purple and no, purple like this, but I want to change it so that it looks like that one. So I'll just change it to move to this side, and should go to somewhere here like that. So save, go back to the page, check, and as you can see, we have this moving from here to here like that. But in order for you to see what is going on, so I will revert it back to the other one, because all those other ones, they are more visible than this, as you can see like that. But when you're working in recent, you've been using it, this one doesn't look nice. All the, you can see all the gradient are there like that. Is majorly the color are always close and they are soft too, so that by the time they meet, the transition from one color to another one is going to be smooth, not that it will just be jump. Even though this one too, some of them are smooth, but it still doesn't, the color are not in harmony like that. So you don't just put any color anyhow. But in order for us to see it, so here the first thing you can supply here is the direction that you want this thing to follow. If you don't supply the direction, it's always from top to bottom like this, but you can always change the direction by giving it the degree. So it's either you do the math yourself or you use the predefined CSS value. So here, if I want to do math, I can just put 45 degree. So which means the color is going to be rotated by this angle like that. So save, and as you can see, so this, this is your angle 90 like that. So the stop has been rotated by this 45-degree in this way. So starting from here, and it's moving up. And if you want to reverse it, so you can always use like 270 or something like that. But this is waste of typing. You don't need to start, do angle and all this thing yourself like that. So what you can do here is to use CSS predefined value for all these common side. As you can see, we can just say to right. So the right like this just mean it's whatever the side you mention whatever the side you mention, it will move towards the opposite, like to come from the opposite side. So since you say it's going to right, that means it has to come from the left. So the color is starting from the left, as you can see, starting from the left, and it will go to the right. If it is to the left too, so that means it will reverse it now. Even though we are starting with red, it means on the right side, it will now be coming so like that. So you can always switch, not the way you arrange the color like that. Or if you want it to be diagonal, you can always mention that one too. So we can say bottom right like that. So save it, so it will start, then it will go to the bottom right or bottom left or top. This is top right, this is the top left, this is the bottom left, and this is the bottom right. And each one of them have the degree assigned to them, but these are the predefined scores. So everything you are doing, even in the text you are typing, by the time you get to the browser, it needs to translate it. And under the computed, you are going to see everything that is going on there like that. So that's how it works. And what else do we have? There's some other things too you can do with these gradients like that, but for now we don't really need them. So when we started using them, all the other one are going to come in like that. But before we let's add this other one into the list too, which is this box model. This is another very important concept that you need to know there. I've been using width and height since, which is what you can use to control the size of the box. So width and height is what you can use to control the size of the box there like that. So you can use it to control, and as you can see, I've used it here like that. So you can control the size of your box. So this is the width and this is the height. But there's going to be problem when you have content that is bigger than the container. By default, when you don't specify width and height, your container will expand to accommodate the content that you have inside it. That's why you see, if you don't mention the height is going to adjust based on whatever content I put inside it. So that's why I have to increase it so that we can see what is going on. Why are you not saving? So save, as you can see now, it stop at where that content stop. So if I go back to the page and add some other content there again, for example, Here I have another p tag, and I have Lauren 80 like that to generate some dummy text. So you see that the box will expand. So the box will only expand. But now, once you started changing the stuff yourself, it will not do anything again. So which means it doesn't care now. With this one will not care again whether the content is going outside of the screen or not. And that is what we call overflow. So what's wrong with this? Save now. Is this 320? Oh, it's still high. Let me reduce it. That means this is, so let me use 120 and save it. So look at it now. So it will now cause something known as overflow, and it doesn't affect that parent, it will affect every other content because it's the parent that is controlling the space. So since the parent has stopped, every other thing will go over other content, and what you are seeing there is known as overflow. And we have the way we used to control it, because there's a lot of time things have to, you have to specify the weight for the parent, or you have to specify the height for the parent, but whatever content you have there must not go past. And that's what ChatGPT 2 is doing here. So you can see inside this box, as you can see, you can scroll inside that place. Even though this is the entire container here, but inside that container what is going to be there will be really long. So there's no way you now say the parent too should just keep, so they limit the weight, they limit the height of the stuff. But inside the weight, as you can see, things can now scroll up and down or left and right depending on what you want. And this is what we call overflow. So you can use overflow to control how things are going to go outside of the container there. So we have this overflow. So hidden, when you say overflow hidden, what means that anything that is going outside of that container will be cut out. Not that it's not deleting it, but you will not see it outside of that box. So we have overflow. What is there by default is visible. So overflow. What is there by default is visible, and that's the reason why you can see. So no more, like, no difference. It's just going to be the same thing. But we don't want anything that is going outside to show, so you can use hidden. Once you say hidden, so where that container stop, any other thing, it will cut them out. So it will call them out like that. So there are some places you need this thing that you don't want things to go outside. For example, you have a box and you place image inside it. You can mention that that thing should not go outside of that, because you turn the box to circle, but the image is still in four corner. So what you can just do here is that instead of that to be square, you can turn that one to circle. But instead of you doing the same thing on both the parent and child, you just said the parent to, anywhere that this thing is going outside, don't let it go outside at all, like that. This is over 80. Another one we have is scroll. So what this mean is that it will give you the scroll bar. As you can see this box now, look at where it started from. This is the height of the stuff, but the content inside is really much. So what do? They give you the scroll bar to scroll up and down. So if you want that stuff to like that, so you just put scroll like this. So what this will do is that it will give us the scroll bar. So because I'm using Mac, I was expecting window. Assuming it's window now, you are going to see it to be visible here clearly. But because it's Mac, so that it's, you can see the way they do their one is hidden. So once you leave, it goes. But assuming it's Mac, assuming it's window, you only see here. It doesn't leave at all like that. So as you can see, other content will scroll inside the box like that. Another one we have here is auto. But why do we have auto? Is because this scroll now is kind of crazy. It will always show that scroll bar. As on window, you are going to see this thing clearly. But let me increase the height like that. So as you can see, this the Mac is really smart there like that. It's not showing the scroll bar at all. But on window, you are going to see that even though it's not scrolling, but you are going to see the scroll bar handles there. But you'll not be able to scroll, but it will still show that handles. And that's the reason why we now have auto. So on the auto there like that, this one will not show the scroll that handle until the container is not having more space to contain the content. So if the container is too small, it will show the handle. But if the stuff is really big and it can accommodate the content, you see that everything there is going to show normal view. So this is the normal view when it's not scrolling. But on window, when you put scroll, even though it's not scrolling, you are going to see the handlebar. It will put it under here and it will put it by this side there, and it's going to look somehow there. So they're like that. But since I'm showing it right now on the Mac, so that's why it looks like this. Doesn't even like it's not showing at all. But later on, when you check it on window, you will see that it will always show. Window will always be visible there like that. So that's this overflow. Another thing I want to talk about is the we have something known as this padding, and we have margin. I think I've talked about it, but this is where I'm going to talk more about it there like that. So we have padding and we have margin. So when you're talking about padding, look at it now. Look at it. There is no space inside this box at all. Everything just jam packed together. Let me reduce the content I have inside this one so that I don't need to be scrolling up and down. This one is just to showcase. So let me leave only this small content here. So save like that. So look at the content. You can see right now. Look at if there's space here. There is no space because I adjust the box height. So that's why it's showing like that. So once I disable the this one now, it will go to the auto. So it will go to the auto, and as you can see, they're like that. So the spacing inside the box. So when you want to add spacing inside the box, that's what we call padding. And when you want to add spacing outside of the box, that's what we call margin. Spacing outside of the box is margin. Spacing inside the box is padding. And please, these properties, they have shorthand. So they have shorthand. They have a lot of shorthand. For example, here now, when you just say, when you need it on the right, you can just say padding right. So here, I just want to use 1rm like that. So save. It means on the right, the box is going to give me that 16 pixels. But in order for us to see it clearly, let's use left because that one did not even have any space at all before. So save. Go back to the, as you can see now, there are now space. But now the space is inside the box, not outside. And that's what we call the box model because everything in CSS, they are referred to as box. Like whatever you can see on the page is just a box. And that's the reason why you see that we put background on this H1. It looks like this box. Because everything on the page, they are box. And it's coming from here. If you come under this computer here too, as you can see, all of them here, everything on this page, the CSS is just seeing them as box. And that box can have padding, it can have border, it can have margin. And that's what I'm trying to explain right now. So the box now, we can put the spacing inside the box. So if I use 3rm, which is 48 pixels like that, as you can see, we have more spacing. But now I don't want the spacing inside. I want it outside. If you look at it, there's some white space around everything. What is going on is because the body by default, it has margin around it. So in order for you to see what is going on, let me turn it off because the body or the browser is applying some default setting. So here now, I can turn the padding off by default and turn the margin off. Going back to the page, can you see now? Everything now jam packed. So in order for you not to jam pack together like this, that's the reason why the browser applied some of this. Or instead of body self, let me turn off for everything. So this asterisk means universal selector, which means it will select everything on the page. Whatever you have on the page, it will select all of them and apply whatever you apply there like that. Can you see? All those your H1 by default, they have margin around them. That's why they have space. But now I've removed it so that you can see now everything is jam packed together. So it now lets for you to apply them where it's needed. But I'm going to disable it. But when we are working in real sense, this is how we are going to do it. We disable all this margin and padding because we want to be the one that will apply it by ourselves. Because if you don't do it like that, as you can see here, you see there's some silly white space here that is not supposed to be there. And that's the reason why you see that this thing is enter like this. You see that this thing is going inside. It's because we use 100% and there's some spacing here already. So it will start going outside of the screen, which is not what you want. So let me just remove this width of 100% that I use here like that so that, can you see? You see that there is this white space around. And the reason why those white space is there is because of the body. So the body have margin. Since they have margin, that's the spacing that is going on there. So the margin of the body is what is affecting all of them. And the browser is applying it by default so that all your text or your content, they are not jam-packed to the edge of the box. But when you're working in real sense, you don't want all this thing to be there. You want all this color to go edge to edge. Anywhere you need that spacing, you now apply it yourself, and that's what I'm explaining right now. Now, which one do you need? Is it padding or margin? So when you want to put the spacing inside the box, you are going to use padding, and when you want to put the spacing outside of the box, you are going to use margin. All of them are using the same thing. The only thing you are just changing is from padding to margin. Every other thing remain the same thing. So if I save it now, as you can see, the spacing is not inside again, is now outside of the box. So you use margin to put spacing outside the box, and padding. And this one is the for the left alone, like the left alone like that. But what if I do margin? So this is what we call shorthand property. So this single property here can change the top, it can change the left, it can change the right, it can change every other side, all the four sides at once. But you need to know the way it works, because the number of value you give to it determine the way it's going to work. And it can accept one value, two value, three value, and four values. So when you give it one value, what this thing will do is that it will apply that same stuff around everything. So please look at it too. Let me explain it first, because it's very important too. When you use this margin or padding, both of them are following the same pattern. The difference is where they are applying the spacing. So let me change it to padding so that it will be more visible because of the white edge. So once I save it now, as you can see, it's applying the same thing to everywhere. What is happening is that when you give it one value, it will use it for all the side. So which means the top will be 3, the right will be 3, the bottom will be 3, and the left will be 3. That's how it moves. Starting from the top, then move to this, move to this, move to this. That's how it uses its value. You know, I told you it can be one value, two value, 3 or 4 values. So it will distribute that value in this way. So when you give it 2 value, this is how it works. So when you give it two value like this, what it will do is that the first value is going to the top, the second value is going to here. So that means there is no value for all this one. So all this one will not take from your opposite. So which means the first value that we have here, which is 3, it will be for the top. So bottom will now be taken from it. So this second value 7, it will go to right. Then that means the left will take from it. So which means the first value is for top and bottom. The second one is for right and left. So once this thing is saved now, you see that left and right is 7, top and bottom are 3, like that. So what if you give it 3 values? So what if you give it 3 value like this? So the first one will go to the top. The second one, which is 7 rem, will go to the right. While the last one, which is 1 rem, will go to the bottom. So this one is still not having, so it will always borrow the opposite side. Any one of them that did not have, it will borrow from the opposite side. So now, as you can see, this one maintain its own 1, and this one maintain its own 3, like that. Or if I put it here, maybe like 11. This one too will not borrow from the top again. It will use its own, because I've already given it its own value. And lastly, when you give it the top value, so maybe I use 0 rem like this. So what this means is that on the left, we don't want any padding at all. As you can see, it's going to remove the left, because the first one is going to the top, the second one is going to the right, the third one is going to the bottom, and the last one is going to the side. So when you give it one value, it will use that single value for all of them. When you give it 2, the first one is for top and bottom, the second one is for right and left. When you give it 3, then that means the bottom will take the third one, and we'll give it 4, then that means the left too will pick the last one. But if you want, you can specify each one of them separately, which is what I was using before, like that. So if it's only one side you want to change, just mention that side. But most of the time, you always want to change left and right at the same time, top and bottom to be the same value. So, but you can do it like this too. Or everything I'll be doing, you can do all of them, but this one now is different line, which is waste of typing like that. So padding top is going to be 3 rem, the right is going to be 7, like that. So the left, but this is waste of typing. The same thing that we have on one line is what we are having on this 4 line. So like that. So that's how it works. Again too, if you want, you can change only the top and bottom. If you want, you can change only the top and bottom, and that's what we call padding block. So when you do padding block, this one is talking about top and bottom only, and this one too is a shorthand property. So it can talk with the top and it can talk with the bottom. When you give it two value, you can only accept two value or one value. So if you give it one value, it use that one value for top and bottom like that. So when you say block, it's just top and bottom, nothing concern the left and right. So if it's only left and right that you want to focus on too, so we have the padding inline. So this one is talking about left and right. So you have the left and you have the right like that. So if you give it one value, it use for the two of them. If you give it two value, then it will distribute it between the two. So if I use 7 rem like this, so going back to there now, you see that left and right will be this, top and bottom will be this. But instead of you typing them two on two line, just say padding. So you are going to have 3 rem and you're going to have 7 rem like that. So you always see me using this method. But if there are some places that I need to focus on one part, then I will mention that part like that. But most of the design, they are always in symmetric, like you're always in proportion. So not that one part is bigger than the other one, but we have some places you might need to actually apply some stuff. But if you look at it, almost all the padding, they are always the same across. If you look at the padding here, you see the same padding at this side and like that. So most of the time you always talk to the left and right at once by using all those shorthand properties. And it's the same thing too you do with the margin like that. Yeah, so that's just it about the stuff like that. I don't want this video to be long. So in the next class, oh, before I call, no, let me explain on this one first. Let me explain on this one. Let me add this one. This is border radius. So if you look at this here, can you see that this edge is curved? So how do you do that? That's where the radius, border radius comes in. But before we get to border radius, we even have border. So this border too is a shorter property. We talked about the line around the box. No, we have the box. So margin talk about the spacing outside the box. Padding talk about the spacing inside the box. Then the line around the box, that's where the border comes in. So border too is a shorthand property because you can use it to change the border color. You can use it to change the style of the color, and you can use it to change the width of the color. So yeah, what you'll be doing, you're going to have the shorthand property can help you to change the width of the color or the thickness or whatever you want to call it. So the thickness of the color, so you can change the thickness of the color. You can change the style of the border rather. So you can change the thickness of the border, the style of the border, and the color of the border. But you can actually mention each one of them separately by just saying border width like this. So this one will change the thickness like that. So we have the border style. This one will change the style, and we have the border color. This one will change the color. But all the three of them combined together can be used on one line like this. So I always love to do it on one line in this way because it's quite easy to type compared to that. So yeah, border. So for my style, it's going to be 5 pixels. There are for the width rather. For the style, it's going to be solid because we have different distance. So we have dotted, which is the dot line like that. But I'm going to use solid. Then the color is going to be green so that we can see what is going on. So going back to the page, scroll down, you see that the line here now is that 5 pixels like that. Or if you want, we can change it to dotted like this. So save, going back to the page, you see that it's going to be dotted, or it can be double like this. So save, going to the page, you see that it's going to be double line or anyhow you want it to be like that. So this is the border. But the thing you need to note that the width you are doing here is going to be added to the width of the box. So if the box is 20 pixels before, so that means your left and right now, it will be plus 10. So if the width of the box is 20 before, if the width of box is 20 before, and you said your border should have 5 pixels, don't forget the border will go across all the edge. So it's going to go to the left. So here now is 5 pixels, here is 5 pixels. That's 10. So whatever the width you had before, it will be added to that. Because as you can see, that's why you see under computed, the final value is the combination of what you have here. So here the actual content, the content is 400, the width of the content is 496.5. But now, as you can see, it add this, which is just 5. So this is 5, this is 5. By the time you add everything together, so that means the width of the box is going to be around that 500 and something like that. So when you where are you? So it's showing the weight, yeah, 496. But on the page, yeah, but the spacing that he's going to take is including that border too. So which means anytime you apply border, it's going to take up space on its own. It doesn't get along with the other one. But there's a way of talking to it that don't add to what is there before. Always reduce from the content width. What is it to happen by default is that when you give a weight to this your box, this your border here will add its own spacing. Even the margin too, when you are dealing with them, they add their own spacing. So but you can always talk to the browser that the calculation of the spacing should not be added to the entire weight. It should be subtracted from whatever weight that you mention. For example, here, let's go back to the page and let me see where is the stuff. So the weight now, let me just say the weight is going to, because there's a property to talk to it to do that. So let's just say the width is at 350 pixels like this. So go to the page. So we have the 350. Oh, I've removed this thing. So let me go back and add it back. So where is the border? So we have it here. So activate it back again to let's add the padding, because all these things they add to what is going on. So let's just add one rem like that. So save like this. As you can see, the padding is this and the border is that. So the final weight here has to include everything. So the weight that you mentioned plus this one, can see that the content now, the weight you mentioned, everything is given to the content. All this one, they are not subtracted from it. Because what you want to do is that the entire box, along with all those things you are adding, should not be more than 350. But look at it here. As you can see, what it did here is the content you have is what is having 350. Then on the left, you have padding of 16. On the right, 16. That means by the time you add them together, that's 32. 32 plus this one. So that means it will add 380. Then again, too, as you can see, it has 5 here, it has 5 there. So everything joined together, that's your final weight of this box. But that thing can cause problem when you are doing proportional here. You know, assuming you said this one should take 50%. You know, all this one will add extra spacing to that 50%. So by the time you now give other content the remaining space that left, you see that that spacing is not enough, because the thing will not be proportional again, because this one has taken more than what is there. So there's a way of talking to the browser that all this extra calculation here should be removed from the final weight that you specify for your element are there. That's where this property comes in there. And we're going to be using all this property later, which is known as this box sizing. By default, what is there is content box. So which means whatever you are dealing with is more focused on content, not entire box. By the time it's doing the calculation, all your weights, whatever you mention, as you can see, this blue area here, that's the content area. This side is a padding area, this is the border area, and this is the margin area. When you apply that one too, like that. So what you can now do here is that, okay, don't just focus on the content alone. When I say the width is 350, I'm talking about the entire box, not just the content box. So we can change the sizing by talking to this thing by saying, okay, we don't want your box sizing to be whatever that used to be before. This is what used to be there by default in a browser. So what you always change it to is this border box. So that by the time it's doing calculation, or the final calculation, it will, can you see now? See that it has reduced. So it has removed all these whatever, so that by the time you add everything together, it will sum to 350. If not, it will take all this one will take their own separate space. So which means when you're now putting content there later on by the side, it will not be balanced, because the percentage is off by all these extra spacing that are coming. Normally, this is what you are supposed to do. So you're supposed to do it in your head, but you don't need to do that. Once you change the box sizing to that this thing, to border box, it will, the browser will do those calculations for you. You give it the final stuff you want, it will do all the normal subtraction for you. But before, if you are using content box, you have to do all those things yourself. Anywhere you apply padding, you have to go there and recalculate it yourself. But with this, you don't need to do that. So when we're working in recent, you see me, and we're not going to be applying it on one element. We use that our global selector to do some of the changes on the browser. So when we want to be working it out, you see some of what we call it CSS reset. So you reset some of the default stuff that the browser is doing that you don't want. So you do it directly there like that. And before we call it this thing, so all this border too, I told you they are short-term property. So if I want to apply this thing on the left alone, I can just say border left. So this is going to, on the left, we're going to have 10 pixels solid blue like that. So with this one, we're only focusing on the left side. But when you just say border, it will focus on all of them like that. So save, go back to the page. You see that can you see now the left one is 10 like that, but the right is still maintaining that 5. So as you can see, it will, and again it has been removed here too, because you know it's 308 before that had been added. So it will do all the necessary calculations so that it will make sure that by the time everything is added together, is still 350 that you mentioned there like that, or whatever the width where that thing is being placed. It will maintain everything there. And lastly, we have the border radius. So this one is still shorter property. You can see the long form of it is border end or border top left, border top right, and so forth like that. So this is what you'll be using. This one to follow one value, two value, three value, but where it's placing it is different. So this is the top. The first value is for this. The second value is for this. The third value is for this. And the fourth value is for this, because it's dealing with edge, not the side. No, it's not dealing with top side. So it's dealing with the edge. So the top left, the top right, the bottom right, and the bottom left. So you can always change them. So if you give it one value, it will use it for all of them. So as you can see here, so all of them will have the same radius around the box like that. But if you give it two value like this, so the first one is going to this, the second one is going to this. Other one they don't have, they will take from the opposite. So which means the first one is for this and this, the second one is for this and this like that. And so any one of them that is missing, we pick from the opposite side like that. And if you give it 3, maybe like 6 rem, then that one too will take its own. It will not be taken from the opposite again. It will just pick its own like that. And if you give it 4 like that, then that one too, it will take its own like this. But look at what is going on here. There I apply this. Yeah, so that's the reason why. So let me disable this like that. So you can see the content is going outside, because once you start doing all this thing, once the content start going outside, but you don't want the content to go outside, what do? You change it to hidden, because most of the time when you are doing this circular stuff, you don't want the content to go outside, and you see that anyone other that is going outside, it will cut it out like that. So that's how all this works. So in the next class, we are going to focus on this the display property, because this is what you are going to be using to lay out your content on the page. As you can see, one content is here, this one is here like that, but they are kind of placed side by side. So with that flex or grid, it's quite easy to do all this kind of layout that you are seeing here like that. So it allows you to place things side by side or to place them on top of each other, as you can see from this diagram, as you can see here. For the so it can help you to place content in this way. So we have the direction, we're talking about direction, we're talking about alignment, how do you want to align it, and so forth like that. And for the grid too, we talked about them. Then after that, we start doing some design that combine them together. But that's not all the basic stuff. But once we talk about this one, we'll be able to do some simple maybe like login page or something like that to apply, to put everything that we've talked. For example, you can just go online, login page, sample like that. So bring it, you're going to see everything that we've talked about can be used for this, but we need that display property in order for you to place this one here and to move this one by this side. But there you can see background image is what they are using at this side. We've talked about the color. Again, we've not talked about the font, but we talk about it directly. All those ones we talk about them when we are working on the design directly. So we don't need to talk about it. Again, as you can see here, this is gradient there. So instead of it to be image, they're using gradient as a background on that page like that. Again, this is another one, and so forth like that, depending on how you want the stuff to be. So that's going to be all. Let me stop